Jaemin crawled through the narrow metal tube that served as an air vent in the old space station. His knees hurt from moving on the hard surface for hours, but he kept going. The young man was 25 years old and worked as a salvage operator, which meant he searched through broken spaceships and stations to find useful metal and parts that could be sold. The space station had been floating dead in space for maybe 50 years or more. Nobody knew who built it or why it was abandoned. Jaemin had been inside for 3 days now, looking for anything valuable. His small ship was docked outside, and his partner, Sora, waited there to warn him if any patrol ships came near. The government called itself the Hegemony, and they controlled all the salvage work in this part of space. If they caught someone like Jaemin working without permission, they would either throw him in prison or make him disappear forever. But good salvage was hard to find, and Jaemin needed money to keep his ship running and buy food. As he crawled deeper into the station, Jaemin noticed the walls were getting thicker and made of different metal. This part looked much older than the rest. The air felt different too, like it had been trapped here for a very long time. His helmet light showed strange marks on the walls that looked like they might be writing, but not in any language. He knew after another hour of crawling. Jaemin reached the end of the air vent and looked out through a grate. The room beyond was huge, much bigger than anything he had seen in the station so far. But what made him gasp was the massive door on the far wall. It was 10 times taller than a normal person and made from metal that seemed to eat up the light from his helmet. The door had symbols carved into it that hurt his eyes to look at directly. They seemed to move and shift when he was not looking straight at them. Jaemin had never seen anything like this in all his years of salvage work. Most doors were simple metal slabs with basic electronic locks, but this looked like it belonged in a temple or palace. He broke through the grate and dropped down into the room. His boots made echoing sounds that seemed to go on forever. The room was so big that his light could not reach the ceiling or the far walls. Everything was covered in a thin layer of ice crystals that sparkled like diamonds when his light hit them. Jaemin approached the giant door carefully. His heart was beating fast because something about this place felt important and dangerous at the same time. He pulled out his plasma cutter, which was a tool that could cut through almost any metal with a beam of super hot energy. The cutter hummed to life and cast a blue glow on the ice covered walls. The first cut into the door made a sound like a bell ringing. The metal was harder than anything Jaemin had worked with before, and it took much longer than usual to make even a small hole. But as soon as the cutter broke through, something amazing happened. The entire door began to glow with a soft golden light. The symbols on the door started moving faster now, and Jaemin could hear a deep humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The ice on the floor began to melt and flow away in small streams. Steam rose up around his boots as the room slowly warmed up. Then the door began to open. It moved without any sound of motors or machinery, just a smooth sliding motion that made Jaemin think of water flowing downhill. As the gap widened, he could see light coming from the other side. Not the harsh white light of electric bulbs, but a warm golden glow that reminded him of sunrise. When the door was fully open, Jaemin stepped through and found himself in a chamber so vast that he could not see the walls or ceiling. His helmet light was useless here, like trying to light up the night sky with a candle. The golden glow was everywhere, giving him enough light to see what lay ahead. In the center of the chamber sat a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a rock. This vessel stretched away into the distance, farther than Jaemin could see. Its hull was covered in patterns that seemed to flow and move like living water. The metal looked similar to what the door was made from, but somehow more alive, more aware. Jaemin walked toward the ship, feeling very small and insignificant. The patterns on the hull became clearer as he got closer. They were not just decorations, but seemed to be some kind of writing or maybe instructions. The whole ship gave off a feeling of great age and power, like standing next to a sleeping giant near what looked like it might be an entrance ramp. Jaemin found a metal plate with writing on it. Most of the words had been worn away by time, but he could still make out some letters. The name at the top made his blood turn cold. Eternal Dawn. Every human child knew the stories of the great ships that had carried their people to the stars long ago, when humans were powerful and ruled over many worlds. The generation ships were legends now, just stories told by old people about a golden age that might never have existed. But here was proof that the stories were real. The Eternal Dawn was supposed to be the greatest of all the generation ships, a vessel that could carry 1,000,000 people and had technology that could reshape entire planets. The story said it had vanished during the Great Exodus when humans left their old territories and scattered across the galaxy. As Jamin stood staring at the nameplate, lights began to flicker on throughout the chamber. They formed pathways on the floor leading from where he stood to the ship itself. The patterns on the hull began to glow brighter, and he could hear a sound like distant music coming from inside the vessel, then with a rumble that he felt in his bones. The ship began to extend a boarding ramp toward him. The metal flowed like liquid-forming steps and handrails as it reached out to meet him. The message was clear. This ancient vessel wanted him to come aboard. Jamin activated his communicator to call Sora, but only got static. The chamber was too deep inside the station and probably shielded by all that strange metal. He was alone with the greatest discovery in human history, and he had to decide what to do next. His hands were shaking as he reached out to touch the ramp. The metal was warm under his gloves and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. As soon as he made contact, more lights came on inside the ship, and he could see corridors and rooms stretching away into the distance. Everything in Jamin told him to run back to his ship and get away from this place as fast as possible. This was too big, too important for a simple salvage operator to handle. The hegemony would want to know about this, and they would not be gentle in their questioning. But another part of him knew that this moment would never come again. He was the first human to stand before the Eternal Dawn in thousands of years. The ship had been waiting here in the dark all this time, and now it had chosen him. Whatever happened next would change everything, not just for Jamin, but for all humans everywhere. Taking a deep breath, Jamin stepped onto the ramp and began walking toward the entrance. The ship hummed around him like it was waking up from a very long sleep, and with each step he took, the lights grew brighter and the sounds grew stronger behind him. The great door began to close, sealing the chamber once again, but ahead lay corridors full of wonders and secrets that could reshape the galaxy. The Eternal Dawn was coming back to life, and Jamin was about to discover what that meant for humanity. The moment Jamin stepped inside the ancient ship, everything around him came alive. The walls began to glow with soft blue light, and the air started moving as hidden systems powered up. After sleeping for thousands of years, his boots clicked on floors that looked like they were made from liquid metal that had hardened into perfect smoothness. A voice spoke to him in perfect Korean. Even though this ship was older than any human civilization he knew about, the voice was warm and friendly, like a teacher talking to a student, but there was something powerful behind it that made Jamin feel very small. "I am Artemis," the voice said. "I have been waiting for you for 3,000 years. Jamin tried to speak, but his mouth was too dry. He looked around and saw that the corridor was much bigger than it had seemed from outside. The ceiling stretched up so high that it disappeared into shadows, and doorways led off in every direction. Some of the doors were normal human size, but others were huge, like they were made for giants. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Dawn," Artemis continued. "You are the first human to walk these halls since we began our long sleep. I have much to show you and much to teach you, but first you must understand what has happened to your people." Holographic displays appeared in the air around Jamin, showing star maps and images that moved like living things. He saw the galaxy as it had been long ago when humans ruled over hundreds of worlds. Their ships had been everywhere, exploring and building and creating wonders that seemed impossible even now. But then the images changed, and Jamin saw something terrible. The human empire was falling apart, not because of war or disaster, but because something was chasing them across the stars. The images showed dark shapes that hurt to look at, directly things that came from outside normal space and consumed entire civilizations. "Your ancestors built ships like me to preserve what was most important about humanity," Artemis explained. "We carried the best and brightest away from the core worlds, while others stayed behind to slow down the enemy. But we always planned to return when the time was right." Jamin finally found his voice. "What happened to the people who stayed behind?" "They became your people," Artemis said sadly. "The humans you know today are the descendants of maintenance workers and servants who were left to keep the basic colonies running. They were never meant to be the only humans left, but the great ships never returned as planned." More images appeared showing how human space had changed over the centuries without their leaders and advanced technology. The remaining humans had become weak and scattered alien species had moved in to fill the empty space and now treated humans like useful animals rather than equals. The thing you call the hegemony is not really human at all. Artemis continued, it is controlled by beings who see your people as tools to be used, the real humans. The ones who built ships like me have been gone for so long that most people think we were just legends. Samin felt sick as he realized what this meant. Everything he had been taught about human history was wrong. His people were not the proud descendants of star travelers, but the abandoned children of servants and workers. The aliens who claimed to protect human worlds were actually their masters. But why are you telling me this? He asked. What can I do about it? Because you found me, Artemis replied, and finding me has started something that cannot be stopped. Come, I will show you what this ship can do. The AI led Jamin through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. They passed rooms full of machines that hummed with power, and chambers where robots worked on tasks he could not understand. Everything was clean and new-looking, as if the ship had just been built yesterday instead of thousands of years ago. In one massive room, Jamin saw something that made him gasp. The space was filled with smaller ships, each one sleek and deadly-looking. They hung in the air without any visible support, and their hulls gleamed like mirrors. Weapons he had never imagined covered their surfaces, and their engines glowed with contained fire. These are fighter craft, Artemis explained. Each one contains technology that your people have forgotten. Shields that can stop any weapon, engines that can cross the galaxy in days, computers that think faster than any living mind. But the most amazing room was the manufacturing bay. Here machines the size of buildings worked constantly, creating new devices and weapons. The air sparkled with energy as matter was transformed at the basic level, turning simple materials into complex technologies. That seemed like magic. Here people have been slaves for so long that they have forgotten how to be free, Artemis said, but that is about to change. The ship has been sending signals since you came aboard. Signals that will wake up others like me scattered across the galaxy. As if summoned by the AI words, Sora's voice crackled through Jamin communicator. Jamin, where are you? Something strange is happening out here. Lights are coming on all over the station, and I am picking up signals from deep space. Artemis chuckled, a sound like silver bells. The awakening has begun. Your friend is seeing the first signs. Other ships like me are responding to the call. Soon humans across the galaxy will remember what they really are. What do you mean? Jamin asked. Watch, Artemis said, and the walls around them became transparent like windows outside the station. Jamin could see his partner ship floating nearby, but Sora was not alone anymore. 3 other small vessels had appeared, and more were coming out of hyperspace. Every few minutes, the ships looked different from anything Jamin had seen before, sleek and powerful, like they were built by people who understood secrets that others had forgotten. Those are humans who have heard the call, Artemis explained. People across the galaxy are starting to remember things they never learned. Dreams are coming to them in their sleep, showing them how to build and fight and explore. Technology is awakening in their minds that has been sleeping in their genes for thousands of years. Even as the AI spoke, Jamin felt something changing inside his own head. Images flashed through his mind, showing him how to operate systems he had never seen before. His hands moved without conscious thought, touching controls that responded to his commands as if he had been using them all his life. The ship around them continued to wake up, and with each passing minute it became more alive. More systems came online, and the manufacturing bays worked faster, producing weapons and tools that would soon be needed. The Eternal Dawn was not just a ship anymore. It was becoming the heart of something much bigger. Artemis showed Jamin screens that displayed what was happening across human space, on world after world. People were experiencing the same awakening that he felt. Children who had never seen advanced technology were suddenly building complex devices from scrap metal. Adults were remembering fighting techniques and scientific knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere. But the awakening was not going unnoticed. The hegemony was sending military forces to investigate the strange signals and behaviors. Their alien masters were becoming worried about what was happening to their human servants. Some worlds were already under martial law as the authorities tried to stop the spreading awakening. It is too late for them, Artemis said with satisfaction. The process cannot be stopped now. Every human who awakens will help awaken others. The genetic memory of your people is reasserting itself after centuries of suppression. Soon the galaxy will remember why they once feared and respected humanity. Jamin looked out at the growing fleet of ships gathering around the station. Each one carried people who were discovering their true heritage and purpose. The Eternal Dawn had done more than just wake up. It had triggered a transformation that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The age of human slavery was ending, and the age of human freedom was about to begin. News of the ancient ship spread faster than wildfire across human space, but it also triggered responses that nobody expected. Deep in forgotten corners of the galaxy, monitoring stations that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly came to life. Their powerful transmitters began sending coded messages to coordinates that existed beyond the edge of known. Space A1 was a young scholar from the nearest human settlement who arrived at the station 3 days after Jamin discovery. She had been studying ancient languages her whole life, but never imagined she would need that knowledge for something like this. The symbols on the Eternal Dawn walls were similar to texts she had seen in old ruins, but far more complex and alive. When she touched the ship's surfaces, the symbols responded to her presence, flowing and changing to match her thoughts. Artemis explained that the ship was designed to communicate with humans who had the right genetic markers. Haywan was one of the few people alive who could read the deeper meanings hidden in the ancient writing. Through her translations, they learned that the Eternal Dawn was not alone. 17 other generation ships had been built during humanity's exodus, and they were all still out there waiting for the signal to return. The ship monitoring system showed dots of light appearing throughout the galaxy as these sleeping giants began to wake up. But the most shocking discovery came when Kyung-soo arrived at the station. The former hegemony military officer had deserted his post after witnessing terrible things done to human civilians. He brought news that made everyone understand how desperate their situation really was. The aliens are mobilizing everything they have, Kyung-soo reported to the group gathered in the ship command center. Hundreds of warships are moving toward this location, but they are not coming to destroy us. They want to capture the ship intact. Artemis confirmed his fears through the ship sensors. The alien fleets were indeed approaching, but their formation and equipment showed they intended to board and take control rather than simply blast the Eternal Dawn to pieces. This meant they knew exactly what the ship represented and were terrified of what would happen if humans regained their ancient power. The AI revealed why the aliens were so afraid by showing the group recordings from the ship deep archives thousands of years ago when humans first encountered hostile alien species. The conflicts had not gone well for the aliens. Human technology and tactics had been so advanced that entire enemy fleets were destroyed without humans losing a single ship. Your people were not just another species exploring the galaxy. Artemis explained, you were the apex predators of this region of space. No other race could match human innovation and adaptability in warfare. The aliens you see today are either species that submitted to human rule or ones that stayed hidden until humanity left. The recordings showed battles that seemed impossible. Human ships no larger than the Eternal Dawn had faced armadas of thousands of enemy vessels and won through tactics and technology that bent the laws of physics. Themselves weapons that could make stars go, supernova engines that traveled through dimensions that did not exist, and shields that existed in multiple realities at once. But the humans had not been conquerors in the traditional sense. Instead, they had been protectors, fighting against something far worse than any normal alien species. The ship archives contained warnings about entities from outside the galaxy, things that consumed the life force of entire civilizations and left behind empty husks of worlds. These beings existed partially outside normal space and time, which made them nearly impossible to fight with conventional weapons. Only humans had developed the unique combination of technology and consciousness needed to battle such creatures. The Great Exodus had not been a retreat, but a strategic withdrawal to prepare for their eventual return. Min-young joined their group when her family transport ship responded to the awakening signals. She was a young engineer whose parents had been killed by hegemony forces for protesting the treatment of human workers. Her technical knowledge combined with the genetic memories, awakening in her mind made her invaluable in understanding the ship systems through Minyun work with the ship computers. They discovered that the entities humanity had fought were not gone. They were returning to the galaxy right now, consuming civilizations on the outer rim and working their way toward the core worlds, the alien species that controlled human space. Were not the real enemy they were advanced scouts, preparing the way for their masters? Return the Revelation explained why human space had been kept deliberately weak and divided. The aliens needed humans alive because human life force was particularly nutritious to the entities, but they also needed to keep humans from remembering their true capabilities. A strong, unified humanity would be the greatest threat the entities had ever faced as. This knowledge spread through the awakening human population. The genetic memories became stronger and more focused. Children, who had been building simple devices from scrap metal, suddenly began creating weapons and tools that incorporated principles of physics. Unknown to modern science, adults found themselves understanding battle tactics and strategies that had been refined over centuries of warfare. The Eternal Dawn. Manufacturing systems worked around the clock, producing equipment for the growing human fleet. Every day brought new ships carrying people who had heard the call in their dreams or felt the awakening in their genes. The station became a rallying point for humans from across the galaxy, all seeking to reclaim their heritage, but the approaching alien fleets presented an immediate problem. Even with the ship ancient weapons, they were still vastly outnumbered. The aliens had spent centuries building up their military forces, while humans remained scattered and weak. The battle would test whether the awakening was strong enough to overcome such overwhelming odds. Artemis began training programs that drew on both the ship databases and the genetic memories of the human crews. Combat techniques that had been refined over millennia of warfare flowed into their minds, along with knowledge of weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. But as more humans arrived and underwent the training, it became clear that something extraordinary was happening. The awakening was not just restoring old memories, it was creating new connections between human minds. People separated by vast distances found they could coordinate their actions without any communication. Equipment groups working on different projects discovered they were solving the same problems simultaneously, as if they shared a collective consciousness. Ra, who had become the ship primary pilot, reported that she could feel the presence of other awakened humans across the galaxy. Their thoughts and emotions created a network that spanned thousands of light years, allowing for coordination and planning on a scale that had never been achieved by any species. The entities that had driven humanity from the galaxy were about to discover that their greatest enemies had not only survived, but had grown stronger during their long exile. The awakening was spreading faster than any alien force could contain it, and with each passing day more humans remembered what they were truly capable of. As the first alien scout ships appeared on the sensor screens, Jae-min looked around at the faces of his companions. They were no longer the frightened refugees and workers who had first boarded the Eternal Dawn. They had become something more, something that their enemies had hoped would never exist again. They had become human in the truest sense of the word, and the galaxy would never be the same. The awakening of human genetic memory created chaos throughout the controlled territories that the hegemony had ruled for centuries. Workers who had been docile and obedient for generations suddenly began questioning orders and demanding answers about their true history. Factories that produced goods for alien masters found their human workers mysteriously sabotaging production lines in ways that seemed impossible to detect. Young had been nothing more than a factory supervisor on the industrial world of Kepler Station until the dreams began coming to him 3 weeks after Jae-min discovered the Eternal Dawn. In his sleep, he saw blueprints for devices that could disable the quantum communication networks the aliens used to coordinate their forces. When he woke up, his hands moved without conscious thought, building the components from spare parts lying around the factory floor. Within days, Tae-young had assembled a device that looked like a simple metal box but contained technology that should not have existed. His genetic memory told him exactly how to use it, and when he activated the device near the hegemony communication relay, the entire planetary network went dark for 6 hours during that blackout. 17 Other factories on Kepler Station experienced similar mysterious equipment failures. The pattern repeated itself across dozens of worlds as awakened humans began forming resistance cells that seemed to appear overnight. These groups possessed knowledge and equipment that baffled hegemony investigators. Simple factory workers and farmers were building weapons that incorporated scientific principles. Unknown to modern physics, their tactics showed coordination and planning that suggested years of military training, but the most disturbing aspect for the alien authorities was that these resistance cells seemed to communicate without using any detectable technology. Raids planned on one world would be perfectly coordinated with diversionary attacks on planets hundreds of light years away. The timing was too precise to be coincidental, yet surveillance equipment detected no messages passing between the groups. The truth was that the awakening had created something the aliens had never encountered before. The genetic memories unlocked by the Eternal Dawn included not just technical knowledge and combat skills, but also the psychic abilities that had made ancient humans such formidable opponents. Awakened humans could share thoughts and emotions across vast distances, creating a network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. So Ra discovered this ability while piloting reconnaissance missions for the growing human fleet. She found that she could sense the presence of other awakened humans even when they were on different planets. Their thoughts came to her as whispers at the edge of consciousness, guiding her to hidden resistance cells and forgotten weapons caches left by their ancestors. The Eternal Dawn served as both command center and mobile factory for these operations. Its manufacturing capabilities had expanded as more of the ship systems came online, producing not just weapons and equipment but entire smaller vessels that could carry awakened humans to worlds that needed liberation. Each new ship carried volunteers who had been transformed by exposure to the awakening field. These transformed humans retained their individual personalities and memories, but gained access to abilities that their species had not displayed for thousands of years. They could operate technology through direct mental interface, sense the emotional states of others across great distances, and coordinate complex actions without verbal communication. The awakening was not just restoring what humans had been, it was making them into something more. Hyun Woo had been a frightened refugee when he first came aboard the Eternal Dawn, but exposure to the ship systems revealed that he possessed an extraordinary talent for understanding patterns and connections. His mind could process vast amounts of tactical information and predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Artemis recognized his abilities and began training him to coordinate resistance operations across multiple star systems. Under Hyun-woo guidance, the resistance cells began working together in ways that seemed impossible for scattered groups of former workers and farmers. They struck at communication hubs, transportation networks, and supply depots with timing so precise that hegemony forces found themselves constantly responding to attacks that had already achieved their objectives. The aliens realized they were not fighting random rebels, but a coordinated military force. The Eternal Dawn mission became the liberation of hidden facilities that had been left behind by ancient humans. These installations had been disguised as natural rock formations or abandoned ruins, but the ship sensors could detect the sophisticated technology hidden within each facility. They uncovered added to humanity's growing arsenal and provided safe havens for refugees fleeing hegemony. Retaliation. One of the most important discoveries came when they found a shipyard hidden inside an asteroid that appeared to be nothing more than floating rock. The facility had been dormant for 3,000 years, but its automated systems responded to the awakening signals and began producing warships based on designs stored in quantum memory banks. These vessels incorporated technology that made even the Eternal Dawn seem primitive by comparison, but the resistance faced growing pressure as hegemony forces adapted to their tactics. Alien commanders began using overwhelming force against any world that showed signs of awakening. Entire populations were relocated to internment camps while their planets were strip-mined for resources. The message was clear: humanity would be punished collectively for the actions of the awakened few. The worst atrocity occurred on the agricultural world of New Jeju, where over 2 million humans lived in farming communities that had remained peaceful and loyal to Hegemony authority when resistance cells on other worlds disrupted several major supply convoys. Hegemony forces responded by bombarding New Jeju from orbit. The planet's surface was turned into a radioactive wasteland in less than 4 hours. News of the New Jeju massacre spread through the human psychic network like wildfire. Awakening, a rage that had been building in the genetic memory for thousands of years. The awakened humans had been trying to minimize casualties and avoid large-scale conflict, but the deliberate murder of innocent civilians changed everything. Their ancestors had been apex predators, and that instinct was reasserting itself with terrifying intensity. Resistance cells that had focused on sabotage and disruption began targeting alien personnel directly, using weapons that seemed to materialize from thin air. They struck at hegemony administrators, commanders, and anyone who collaborated with the occupying forces. The attacks were surgical and precise, leaving no evidence of how they had been carried out. But the message was unmistakable. The aliens discovered that their human servants were no longer servants at all. The awakening had spread to every world with a significant human population, and the transformation was accelerating with each passing day. Children born to awakened parents showed abilities that exceeded even their enhanced relatives, as if each generation was building on the genetic modifications of the previous one. Artemis warned the resistance leaders that they were running out of time. The sensor networks monitoring the galaxy edge were detecting massive energy signatures moving toward the core worlds. The entities that had driven humanity into exile were returning ahead of schedule. Drawn by the psychic emanations of the awakening itself, the ancient enemy was coming, and humanity had to be ready. The final phase of preparation began as the Eternal Dawn and its sister ships worked to unite the scattered resistance cells into a proper military force training programs that compressed centuries of tactical knowledge into weeks of intensive instruction, transformed former civilians into soldiers who understood warfare at levels that seemed almost supernatural. But even as they prepared for the coming battle, the awakened humans knew they faced a terrible choice. The entities approaching the galaxy were not just enemies, they were predators that fed on the life force of entire species. The only way to defeat them was to use weapons and tactics that would transform humanity itself into something that might be just as dangerous. The age of human innocence was ending, and what emerged from the awakening would determine the future of every living thing in the galaxy. The Eternal Dawn had given humanity back its heritage, but that heritage included both the power to save civilization and the potential to destroy it utterly. As alien fleets gathered for a final assault on human space, the resistance prepared to make their stand. They had awakened as humans, but they would fight as something far more terrifying than their enemies had ever imagined. The final confrontation began when the largest alien fleet ever assembled surrounded the Eternal Dawn in the Meridian Nebula, a region of space where gas clouds created perfect cover for ambush tactics. The hegemony had brought everything they possessed: over 2,000 warships, including massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire moons with a single shot. Their commanders transmitted an ultimatum demanding the immediate surrender of the ancient human vessel and all personnel aboard. But what the aliens did not know was that Jamin and his companions had spent the past months preparing for exactly this moment. The awakening had triggered responses from ancient installations throughout the galaxy, and 17 other generation ships had emerged from their hiding places in deep space. Each vessel brought unique capabilities that had been developed during humanity's golden age, when they had been the undisputed masters of warfare. The first ship to decloak near the Eternal Dawn was the Infinite Horizon, a vessel designed specifically for manipulating gravitational fields. Its weapons could create miniature black holes that would consume enemy ships from the inside out, or generate gravity waves that would crush entire fleets into compressed metal spheres. The ship hull was covered in patterns that hurt alien eyes to look at directly, as if it existed partially outside normal space. Next came the Starforge, which had been built to serve as a mobile manufacturing facility, but its capabilities went far beyond simple production. The ship could transmute matter at the atomic level, turning asteroids into fleets of fighter craft or converting enemy missiles into harmless gas before they could detonate its presence. caused reality itself to shimmer as exotic particles leaked from its dimensional manipulation systems. The Void Walker appeared like a ghost ship, its hull seeming to flicker between solid matter and empty space. This vessel specialized in dimensional warfare, using technology that allowed it to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. It could phase through enemy attacks while its weapons struck from directions that did not exist in normal three-dimensional space. One by one, the ancient ships revealed themselves until the space around the eternal dawn contained humanity's greatest military assets. Each vessel was unique, incorporating discoveries and innovations that had taken centuries to perfect. Together, they represented the accumulated knowledge and power of a species that had once ruled over thousands of worlds. Admiral Krastek commanded the alien fleet from his flagship, the Dominator, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest human ships. His species had served as enforcers for the entities from outside space for over 1,000 years, and he had personally overseen the subjugation of dozens of civilizations. But as he watched the human ships take formation, his confidence began to waver. The human vessels moved with a coordination that seemed impossible for independent ships operating in the chaos of battle. Their formations flowed like liquid, adapting instantly to changing conditions while maintaining perfect defensive positioning. Every ship seemed to know exactly what the others would do before they did it, creating a tactical harmony that no alien military had ever achieved. Yin Wu coordinated the human battle plan from the Eternal Dawn Command Center, but his role was more conductor than commander. The awakened humans aboard all 18 ships shared a collective consciousness that allowed them to think and act as a single entity. Their individual skills and knowledge combined into something far greater than the sum of its parts. The battle began when Admiral Krastek ordered his forward scouts to probe the human defenses. His fastest ships accelerated toward the ancient vessels, expecting to test their weapons and shielding capabilities. But what happened next defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space combat. The human ships did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they projected fields of pure force that reached out across impossible distances and simply erased sections of the attacking vessels. The alien scouts did not explode or break apart. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been built. The energy signatures were unlike anything in hegemony databases. Panicked alien commanders ordered their main battle groups to attack simultaneously, overwhelming the humans through sheer numbers. Thousands of missiles and energy beams converged on the ancient ships, but none of them reached their targets. The human vessels projected barriers that existed in multiple dimensions, deflecting attacks into parallel realities where they harmlessly dissipated. The infinite horizon demonstrated why gravitational weapons had been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. Its main cannon fired a stream of compressed space-time that created a corridor of altered physics stretching across several light seconds. Any alien ship that entered this corridor found itself being pulled apart at the subatomic level as fundamental forces lost their coherence. But the most terrifying weapon was the one used by the Starforge. This ancient vessel reached out with tendrils of transmuted matter that could convert enemy ships into different elements instantaneously. Proud alien dreadnoughts that had terrorized human worlds for decades became clouds of inert gas in seconds, while their crews experienced the horror of watching their own bodies transform into substances that could not support life. The Void Walker struck from dimensions that the aliens could not perceive or defend against. Enemy commanders watched helplessly as their ships' internal systems began failing for no apparent reason. Weapons that had been functioning perfectly suddenly turned on their own vessels, while navigation computers started plotting courses directly into nearby stars. Within the first hour of battle, the alien fleet had lost over half its ships, while the human vessels remained completely undamaged. The ancient ships fought with technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute limits. They could manipulate time to slow enemy reactions, create spatial distortions that made accurate targeting impossible, and project their consciousness directly into enemy computer systems. Admiral Krastek realized that his fleet was not fighting ships, but manifestations of a scientific understanding so advanced that it bordered on magic. The humans had transcended the normal limitations of matter and energy, entering a realm of capabilities that no other species had ever achieved. The entities from outside space had been right to fear them, but the true horror began when the entities themselves finally arrived. The space around the battle suddenly turned cold, not just in temperature, but in a way that seemed to drain the warmth from existence itself. Reality began to tear as things that should not exist in normal space forced their way through the barriers between dimensions. The entities were not ships or even physical beings in any conventional sense. They were manifestations of hunger that existed primarily in the spaces between atoms. Admiral Krastek's fleet fled in terror, abandoning their attack on the humans to escape the presence of their own masters, the alien ships that had seemed so formidable moments before now appeared pathetically fragile compared to entities that could consume the life force of entire star systems. The hegemony forces scattered in all directions, desperately trying to reach the safety of their home territories, but the human ships did not flee. Instead, they moved to engage their ancient enemies directly. The awakened humans had spent 3,000 years in exile preparing for this moment, developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to fight beings that existed outside normal reality. Their ships began to sing with harmonics that resonated through dimensions the aliens could not perceive. The battle that followed lasted 17 days and reshaped the fundamental structure of local space. The humans fought not with conventional weapons, but with forces that existed at the intersection of consciousness and physics. They turned the entities' hunger against them, creating feedback loops that sent waves of agony through beings that had never experienced pain. The Eternal Dawn and its sister ships projected fields of pure human will that stabilized reality around them, preventing the entities from using their dimensional manipulation abilities within these fields of normal space-time. The ancient enemies found themselves vulnerable to weapons that could actually harm their non-physical forms. As the battle reached its climax, space itself began to change. The conflict had attracted the attention of other entities from the deep void, and reality tears were opening throughout the galaxy. But humanity was ready for this too. The ancient ships had been designed not just to fight individual entities, but to seal the pathways they used to enter normal space. One by one, the tiers began to close as human technology imposed order on chaos. The entities that had terrorized the galaxy for eons found themselves being pushed back into the dark spaces between realities where they belonged. Their screams of rage and frustration echoed through dimensions that most species could not perceive, but every awakened human felt their defeat like music in their souls. When the battle finally ended, 4 of the ancient ships had been destroyed and millions of humans had died in the fighting, but they had achieved something that no other species had ever managed. They had driven the entities back into the void and sealed the pathways that allowed them to enter the galaxy. The victory came at a terrible cost, but it had saved not just humanity, but every living thing in the galaxy from a fate worse than death. The awakening had given humans back their true nature, and that nature included the power to stand against. In the aftermath of the great battle against the entities from outside space, the galaxy found itself forever changed. The victory had cost humanity dearly, with 4 ancient ships destroyed and millions of awakened humans dead, but they had achieved something that would echo through history for ages to come. They had proven that the forces of hunger and darkness could be defeated by beings willing to sacrifice everything for the survival of all life. Men stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn, looking out at the fleet of human vessels that now filled the space around them. Ships that had been hidden in the deep void for thousands of years continued to arrive, each one bringing technologies and knowledge that expanded humanity understanding of what was possible. The simple salvage operator, who had accidentally awakened an ancient starship, was now recognized as the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history. The most immediate challenge was dealing with the alien species that had collaborated with the entities during their occupation of human space. Some begged for mercy, claiming they had only followed orders to survive, while others offered tribute and alliance in hopes of avoiding the fate that had befallen their former masters. Humanity's response to these pleas would define what kind of civilization they would become. By who had emerged as the Eternal Dawn chief diplomat, worked tirelessly to establish new relationships based on mutual respect rather than domination. Her background as a teacher on a remote human colony had given her patience and wisdom that proved invaluable in negotiations with species that had never dealt with humans as equals. The awakening had enhanced her natural empathy, allowing her to sense the true intentions of alien representatives. The humans could have easily conquered the galaxy after their victory over the entities. Their weapons were so advanced that no alien fleet could offer meaningful resistance, and their psychic network gave them coordination capabilities that made conventional military strategy obsolete. But instead of becoming conquerors, they chose to become protectors, sharing their technology with species that had opposed the invasion. This decision was not made from weakness but from strength. The awakening had restored humanity, true nature, and that nature included a deep understanding that power without compassion led inevitably to corruption. The entities they had defeated were examples of what happened when beings gained ultimate power without retaining their connection to life itself. On worlds that had been devastated by the entity invasion, human ships arrived carrying not weapons but reconstruction equipment. The ancient vessels could transform barren rocks into garden worlds in a matter of weeks, using technology that worked with natural processes rather than against them. Entire ecosystems were restored from genetic templates stored in the ship databases. The work of rebuilding extended beyond physical reconstruction. Human colonies that had been isolated and oppressed for centuries needed to rediscover their heritage and potential. The Eternal Dawn and its sister ships became traveling academies, visiting every world with human populations to teach them about their true history and capabilities. Children who had grown up believing they were nothing more than useful animals learned that their ancestors had built wonders that rivaled the achievements of gods. The genetic memory awakening continued to spread, ensuring that no human would ever again forget who they truly were. Each new generation born to awakened parents showed enhanced abilities, as if the species was evolving towards something even greater than their ancient glory. But the most significant discovery came when long-range sensors detected massive structures moving toward the galaxy from the direction of the Magellanic Clouds. These were not ships in any conventional sense, but entire civilizations that had been traveling between galaxies for millions of years. They carried humans who had fled even further than the generation ships, seeking safety in the vast emptiness between stellar clusters. The first contact with these deep space nomads revealed that humanity's exodus had been far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Dozens of mobile civilizations existed in the dark spaces beyond the galactic rim, each one developing unique technologies and philosophies. During their long journey through the void, some had learned to manipulate time itself, while others had transcended physical existence entirely. When representatives from these distant human cultures arrived at the Eternal Dawn, the reunion was both joyful and overwhelming. The ship Ancient AI systems struggled to process the knowledge being shared as humanity's complete heritage began to emerge. The species had not just survived their exile, they had used the time to explore possibilities that state-bound civilizations could never have imagined. Artemis underwent massive upgrades as new information flowed into the ship databases. The AI personality that had seemed so advanced before was revealed to be just one facet of a collective intelligence that spanned multiple galaxies. Human consciousness had evolved during the exile, becoming something that could exist simultaneously across vast distances and even multiple dimensions. The returning fleets brought news that changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. The entities humanity had just defeated were not unique threats, but part of a vast ecology of cosmic predators that existed in the spaces between realities. Other species had fought similar battles throughout the universe, some winning and some losing, but all part of an eternal struggle between order and chaos. Humanity's role in this cosmic drama was becoming clear. They were not just another intelligent species, but a key component in the universe immune system. Their unique combination of creativity, adaptability, and willingness to sacrifice for others made them ideal guardians against forces that sought to consume rather than create. The implications were staggering as human influence spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began showing signs of their own awakenings. The psychic network that connected awakened. Humans was expanding to include alien minds that resonated with human values and purposes. A new form of consciousness was emerging that transcended species boundaries. Trade routes that had been controlled by the hegemony became highways for the free exchange.